Welcome to the Steering Change Podcast, navigating through the commercial transportation industry in Alberta and beyond. Powered by the Alberta Motor Transport Association. Here's your host, Kelsey Hipkin.
Hello, friends of Steering Change, and welcome back to part 2 of a 3-part series, The Road Beneath: Ethics, Exploitation, and Accountability in Trucking, in which we're pulling back the curtain on the trucking and logistics industry. Today we're looking at Driver Inc., the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, and success stories from the Frontlines. Human trafficking takes many forms, from forced labor or sexual abuse, debt bondage or fraud-based recruitment, and employment exploitation, and it exists in every corner of the global economy. While often associated with hidden or illicit industries, trafficking frequently happens in plain sight, including in commercial transportation. When vulnerable workers are misled, coerced, or trapped by false promises of employment, the harm extends far beyond the individual. Ethical employers are undercut, public trust erodes, and the entire industry faces reputational damage and regulatory risk. Canada's commercial transportation sector is not immune, and the rise of the Driver Inc. model shows how quickly labor exploitation can grow when oversight and enforcement fall behind. Misclassifying workers has always been illegal, but in recent years, governments have begun to strengthen enforcement. In 2021, the federal government introduced new penalties for federally regulated employees, and in 2024 shifted the burden of proof onto employers to show that a worker is not an employee. At the same time, provincial trucking associations and enforcement agencies have launched coordinated roadside inspections targeting labor violations nationwide. These are important steps, but industry voices agree they're not enough. This exploitation intersects with deeper concerns around the temporary foreign worker and LMIA programs. When used properly, these programs create real opportunity and help address genuine labor shortages. But when abused, newcomers are charged tens of thousands of dollars for jobs that come with false promises, coercive conditions, and the constant threat of termination and deportation, patterns that closely mirror human trafficking. That is why awareness and action matter. We have 3 guests today, and our first will focus on the Driver Inc. model and how industry and AMTA are addressing it. I'd like to welcome AMTA President Robert Harper. With us again today is my co-host from episode 1, Doug Walton. Thank you, Doug. Robert, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
For listeners who may not know what Driver Inc. is, why does AMTA and industry see it more than just a tax or paperwork issue?
Well, the reason is it's become a gateway for people cutting corners, not just on costs, but on safety. And we see where they're cutting costs in terms of tax. They cut safety. They have drivers driving longer hours, pressing drivers to drive more tends to cause more accidents. It is also the way it's structured is a worker does not have the right to refuse unsafe work because they're not an employee, they're a contractor. Mm-hmm. So it pushes the burden of responsibility to the driver entirely as a separate contractor.
And you did touch on this a bit, but can you elaborate on how the Driver Inc. model affects safety on the road, working conditions, fair competition, et cetera, within industry?
Sure. Because the Driver Inc., it's already cost below what a regular employer pays, the incentive has been to, cut 25, 35% below cost. There's also then becomes this, as I said before, this cost cutting is cut safety in terms of vehicle maintenance, having the drivers drive longer hours, flouting weather conditions where there's unsafe road and weather. It's to go, look, if you don't complete your route, we'll not pay you. If you don't come on time, we'll not pay you. So it becomes this ever pushing onto the drivers to speed. Because you're late, you're driving in unsafe weather. So it continues to push everything in terms of safety that, look, if you want to get paid, you better do what the contractor's telling you to do, or you'll not get paid for this load and you won't get any future loads. And if, we happen to do some sort of arrangement where you're leasing a perpetual vehicle from me, well, that will cut your revenue source, but you'll still owe me for the vehicle.
Mm-hmm. And what role have federal and provincial enforcement efforts played so far? And are you seeing gaps that still need to be addressed?
Well, talk about they have done blitzes at the scales, and that has helped to verify or validate what industry has been telling them. I think it became a bit of a surprise, I think, to both federal and provincial regulators when they did the first blitzes that, geez, we are really seeing that it is like 30% of 40% of drivers that seem to look like they're probably in the driver Inc. model. So that's helped to, raise the credibility of what industry's been telling them. There still needs to be, and the most recent federal budget allocated more money to ESDC and to CRA to actually audit and look after these. And last year, the CRA and ESDC did come to an agreement to share information, which has been one of the problems. Is we have different federal departments, and even between the province and the federal government, they don't share information. So we need more of that information sharing. As a public, it's very disturbing to find that different levels of government, or even within the same level of government, in fact, are somehow prevented by law from sharing information between different departments. It's sort of a bizarre situation where, one area of the government won't share or can't share information with another. We see, there has to be just more due diligence from both ESDC and CRA to delve into these problems and be looking at it as not just a one-off problem that, it's a tax problem. As we see, there's a wide range of spectrum of problems when we see the driver Inc. tend to be in, they have to go, we've got to hit safety, we've got to hit WCB, we've got to hit GST, income tax, there are safety certificates, chameleon carrier activities, have to be looking at a whole wide range and not just focused on, we found a problem here, here's a fine. You got to look at the whole company and focus in on that they're probably doing a myriad of things and make sure that they don't just re-register in the current jurisdiction or change jurisdictions. And that's becomes a bit of a problem when they start hitting problems with enforcement. They just create a new company, move their trucks, move jurisdictions, and then the clock starts all over again.
Robert, you've done a great job raising awareness and these concerns about the temporary foreign worker program being exploited. Recently, you shared it with the House of Commons Standing Committee on Transportation, Infrastructure, and Communities. What's happening there, and why do you describe it as resembling modern slavery?
Sure. So the committee is really, it started in the fall, doing an investigation on the issues of driver Inc. So those committee hearings, I think, will probably end up this week. The first sessions were supposed to end in October. They extended the sessions, which led to my getting an invitation along with BCTA and OTA last week. The committee will, probably in a month or two, put out some recommendations, and I think these inquiries have led to the recent changes that the government put in for T4As, so that help, identify people who are subcontractors, that there is a source of document that they're going to have to report their income tax on. And also the money in the budget, I think, came out of those committee meetings. So for that, I think we're reasonably happy, because often committees don't actually achieve a whole lot. This committee, I think, has highlighted that information, and good for the current government to take some activity. In terms of the temporary foreign worker and modern slavery, so just to be clear, when people normally think of slavery, we'll think of chattel slavery, where somebody is owned by another one. But there's certainly an older form of slavery called indentured servitude, which is what the temporary foreign worker program can become in its worst format, which is in what we know is happening. And actually, I had somebody phone me the other day who paid a consultant. So to get hired in Canada, these people, foreign workers, pay a consultant to get hired by a Canadian company. We've estimated some people pay between $25,000 and $75,000 to a consultant. They get hired. They come to Canada to work for a couple of years, under their LMIA or the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. They get the ability then they hope, by coming to Canada and working for a couple of years, to convert that into a path to citizenship. Okay, you're not supposed to pay for that to happen. But now you've paid, let's say, $50,000, go halfway. Okay, I paid $50,000. I have an investment into the job I'm working for. If I get my employer terminate me, well, what happened to my investment?
Right.
It's gone. And so then what are you going to do? Well, you're supposed to be hired as an employee. They show up and go, no, you're going to work as a contractor. Okay, what are they going to say? Well, no, that's not, catch the plane home. And then comes into the working conditions.
Right.
Oh, you want to drive, you don't want to drive in the snow? Back on a plane. I have a house where I've 8 other truckers working and they're paying $3,000 a month in rent. You have to stay there and pay me that rent. Oh, how about a kickback every paycheck for the benefit of me because I brought you to Canada? How about the training? We trained you to do this and that. That's not supposed to be under your training that the employer's supposed to pay for that. No, you need to reimburse me for that training. And we know of situations as well where the guy goes, look, I've been here for 2 years. I want to apply for landed immigrant status. As an employee, you're supposed to have two years worth of pay stubs, I think, or a period of pay stubs. And they'll go, well, geez, I brought you to Canada. It was under this driver Inc. model, which pays, instead of, let's say $35 an hour, we're paying you $25 an hour. Okay, I will pay you that $35 an hour, but you're going to give me a kickback every pay of $10 an hour because that's not the model I brought you to Canada on, not was pay you $35, even though they told the government that. So it becomes that slavery is you don't have an option. Mm. You're basically tied to their employment as long as your debt hasn't been paid. So you're in debt to them because you paid some money to get into the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. So that's why it's slavery. Really, you've invested some money. There is ways to get out of it if you go to the Immigration Canada and make your case that you're being exploited. They could create an open work permit for you, but they could just as easily deport a person because you've paid a bribe to get a job in Canada. It's one of those things is, you should do this. Well, you could do that, but putting it at risk of losing that money that, again, the person paid that they shouldn't have paid, but then they've locked themselves into a vicious cycle of abuse.
When you break it down to all the different avenues and the way they can exploit those workers, and the list goes on. I couldn't believe how many you listed off there and easily exploit those workers.
Well, I had a fellow who phoned me the other day, brought into Canada. This was on Friday, phoned me and said, look, can you help me find a position? I was brought to Canada under an LMIA. My employer didn't get approval, but I have a visa to run into the United States. And I said, you're not supposed to be in Canada if your LMIA wasn't approved. Yeah, but I could pay someone to do this, and I don't want to pay a second time. So he had paid, and now he's been screwed over, and he's going, well, how do I've done this investment? How do I get a legitimate employer who does the proper way to put him on LMA? But I think we're finding really they're not hiring there's not a lot of need for LMI workers currently. So, it's hard to say what his solution was. He's paid some money, come to Canada, and doesn't have the opportunity. The other one we saw currently was we've raised the issue, with the government. They raised the minimum starting rate on what drivers would require, they move it to a high wage rate. And we've had employers say, look, you've raised it to, I can't remember what they've raised it to, $35, $40 an hour. He said, look, we can't afford to bring somebody in legitimately and pay them. And these employers will say, yeah, the guys who lie and say, I'll pay that rate, won't pay the rate, but they'll lie. And the government hasn't, done, and this is one of the things is you pre-qualify a company, make sure they're a legitimate employer, follow up later to make sure they're actually paying the employee as they said they were going to. And, what was missing on both sides is that validation that, hey, you incorporated 6 months ago, you have 2 trucks and you're hiring, I'm using an exaggeration, 4 temporary foreign worker positions. Well, hold on. You don't have any drivers in Canada and you've got 2 trucks and need to hire 4 temporary foreign workers. Something's off.
Yeah.
So these are things that the government should really be looking at.
When you look ahead, how can Canada balance rising regulatory and environmental, costs with the need to eliminate Driver Inc., while still protecting jobs, safety and the competitive transportation industry and keeping it competitive?
Well, there's lots of regulations currently. It's to make sure that they enforce the critical ones about what is your company's safety records, what is your carrier fitness certificate. They need to do more regular audits, I would say, of facility audits. There, I think, is a lack of that. If you looked at the unsatisfactory but satisfactory unaudited, it's a huge, of, let's say, the 18,000 carriers in the province, there are very few that are satisfactory audited.
Yeah, I think it's 80% are unaudited still.
Yeah, and you're going there has to be a way to review those drivers rather than just provide, we've given them the status of satisfactory unaudited, and then could be years before they're ever reviewed.
Well, thanks for sharing those insights with me. Back to you, Kelsey.
For more details on Driver Inc., Robert has done a 3-part series that you can find on AMTA's YouTube. We will also put the link to that in the show notes. That does wrap up everything we had today, Robert, but I just wanted to ask, is there anything that you would like to add on ending?
No, I don't think so. Again, it's something, the Driver Inc. is something that I think the public is becoming more aware of. Hopefully the drivers that are, involved in it, that you become aware of the risks, both for yourself, for safety operating on the road, but you should also be aware of the income tax aspects that you could eventually be hit with if you are audited, if or when you're audited. You could be liable for tens of thousands of dollars of unpaid taxes if you're not been declaring it as you should, and there's a big risk there. And your employer may or not be in business to go after those if you get audited. So make sure you're looked after, both safety on the road and your personal finances.
Great. Thank you, Robert. And thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Now that we've touched on the temporary foreign worker program with Robert Harper, we'll now take a more in-depth look at a carrier who utilizes it. For those who might not know, the temporary foreign worker program exists to address real labor shortages in Canada, in situations where employers cannot find enough qualified workers domestically. When used properly, the program is about continuity, safety, and fairness, supporting businesses that do things the right way, while providing workers with lawful employment, protection, and the opportunity to contribute meaningfully to Canada's economy. Concerns about abuse in Canada's temporary foreign worker program began gaining attention in the 2010s. By 2013 and 14, the federal government had introduced stronger compliance rules and a confidential tip line after reports of exploitation and misuse. Since then, media coverage and advocacy groups have continued to highlight risks, and while the program feels real labor shortages, cases of its misuse are still ongoing. During the same period, penalties more than doubled from 2,067,750 to 4,882,500, and resulted in 36 employers being banned from the TFW program, a threefold increase from last year. From April 1st, 2024 to March 31st, 2025, examples of noncompliance violations included an employer in the agriculture sector who was fined $212,000 and banned from the TFW program for 2 years for failing to provide proper working conditions and for not providing the required documentation to inspectors. An employer in the residential building construction industry was fined $161,000 and banned from the TFW program for 5 years for failing to provide proper wages and working conditions and lack of compliance with federal and provincial labor laws. And an employer in the long-haul trucking industry was fined $150,000 for failing to genuinely operate a business and for not providing the required documentation to inspectors. For this episode, we'll be hearing from a commercial driver who came to Canada through the program, navigated its challenges, and built a successful career. We will also hear from the company that recruited this individual and learn how the program helped address labor shortages across their network. For this interview, I'd now like to throw to my colleague, Doug Walton. Take it away, Doug.
Hi, friends. I'd like to take a moment to welcome Robert Kupinic, a professional Class 1 operator who came to Canada through the Temporary Foreign Worker Program and has been with Canada Cartage ever since. To start, Robert, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from?
Yes. Hi, thank you for having me. I'm from Croatia. I'm from capital city Zagreb. I came to Canada 2015 on the program that Canada Cartage came to Croatia to hire temporary foreign workers. And, since then, I'm with the company.
That's great. Can you tell us a little bit about the early life in Croatia and what motivated you to look for different opportunities in another country?
Yeah. So, life in Croatia is okay. No complaining, but it's not easy, especially for young people. Back then, I don't know how it's now, because I heard some stories that it's getting better but it's not still good. So, it's mostly financial things that draw people from Croatia to get a better, life.
Well, I believe when you and I have met, obviously, and for our listeners, I had the opportunity of meeting Robert back in Croatia when we talked about hiring you.
Yeah.
And I remember being there, and I'm hearing the stats about unemployment rate being around the 40 to 45% back then.
Yes.
And that was what was technically posted.
Yes.
But I think it was a bit of a darker picture than that.
Yeah.
In reality. So how did you first learn about the LMIA program, and what convinced you that it was the right path for you?
You know what? LMIA program in Croatia, I see it on the internet. I didn't know what is LMIA, to be honest with you, because I saw the ad on the internet, Croatian internet page, and, I said, I will go for it because I don't have absolutely nothing to lose. I was working in the company, I don't want to say the name, but it doesn't matter, probably it's not important now, but I was not happy. I was like a young guy, 30s, married, and it's not easy. It was not easy. No.
Well, I remember showing up there on that Friday, and it was standing room. There was probably, I think, a couple hundred people, including yourself there at the hotel when we first met. And
yes.
Going through all those interviews, hearing the stories of, people going to work for a company for months and months, not getting paid, and holding on, waiting for that paycheck, and then going and showing up the next day and the company is closed and no longer there. And, that was through a lot of those interviews. I heard a lot of those stories. And so when you talk about the financial struggles and being a main decision maker, I can understand why.
Yes.
What was the hardest part about coming to Canada, before and after you arrived?
Maybe the adjustment. If I'm a good fit for the country, because I know the mentality. I think it's different, of course, because it's a hard work, right? Mm-hmm. So you need to work to succeed. It's not like somebody is going to give it to you, right? That most of the people think, like I was surprised with the guys who came here. They thought like, we would just work a couple of hours and then we were going to make money that we are making back home or maybe more. That's not the Canadian way of trucking, right?
Right.
It's like minimum the whole day, like 14 hours.
So when you think about it back then, leaving your home country, obviously, you were born there.
Yes.
Your roots are there. Your
Yes.
family's there.
Yeah.
That could have been another, I guess, roadblock in the decision making to come into Canada, like leaving your home country. What went through your mind when you finally got that call and said, "Hey"?
Yeah. You know what? It was not easy leaving like my family, like my mom. But I said, I don't have, I'm going for it. It's a new way. Of course, I didn't know because lots of us was thinking like, is this for real? Like, is the Canadian companies really hiring us? Because, people were like, yeah, it's a scam. It's like, no way, like maybe they're going to fly us somewhere, It
sounded too good to be true.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, and then, the whole journey going to BC first for the training and, from BC, here in Alberta, somebody came to BC, somebody went to BC, somebody went to Alberta. And, like making a new life, like back then, Safety Carey from Edmonton told us it's going to be like, completely new, like you were born here, like buying your first spoon, knife, fork, making really a new life.
So what did you, from your perspective, what was the toughest part about when you first arrived here?
But you know what? I don't want to, somebody will say, oh yeah, it's language.
Yeah.
Language is like, we learn English from movies, from songs. It's not like synchronization. It's not in Croatia, but yeah, like adjustment. Like it's totally new. Like people, it's not the same.
Right.
You are close up here. You're not open because if you say something, somebody's going to be like, "Who are you?" Like I don't know you. But back home, you can talk, about anything with everybody because it's the same language, right?
Right. Right.
If I move to another city, again, it's the same language. Here it's like, if I'm going to say something different, they're going to say like, what? I don't understand that.
Just being able to clearly communicate with the people around you is a challenge.
Exactly.
Right?
And, that was also like communication with the company. Like lots of new phrases. Like somebody will say, oh, you're going to BC. What is BC? Like what is SK? What is AB? I don't know what is that, right? So then my manager will think, oh yeah, that's like Saskatchewan. Like, what is Saskatchewan?
Well, I couldn't imagine going to Croatia, being handed a set of keys and say, okay, navigate your way through and do this delivery safely, and without a support from the company giving me that training.
Oh yeah, and help with GPS.
Right.
Also, if I didn't have GPS, thank you.
I still rely on GPS.
Yes.
Was there ever a moment, Robert, when you thought that it just may not work out for you?
You know what? No. I think from the start, like I was setting my goals high. I said like, nope, I cannot quit. I cannot fail.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going home.
Right.
Maybe it's like a little bit cocky for me, and maybe my body just said, yeah, you're just telling this for the show. No.
Well, not failing, it's different. It's not like you go, okay, I'm going to go try this new job and I fail at it. I'm going to go back to my old job or whatever. You're leaving your home country.
Yes.
In most cases, and I heard a lot of those stories, still do today. I sold everything to come here. My family, home, property, cars, everything.
Yes.
So if it doesn't work out, it's a different level of, I wouldn't say failure, but it's scary because you have to go back and there's nothing to go back to, right? So it elevates the I got to make this work.
Yes,
feeling, right?
And you know what? We are high, like in judgment, like Europeans are more like, oh, if you fail, we're gonna judge you like really long time, because why you didn't succeed? Like why? How? But it's people don't understand. Like guys came to Canada, they go to Germany, they go to Ireland, they go to other parts of the world, and they say like, oh yeah, it's not good. It's not good. I need to go back home. And then when they are home, no, it's not good there. So where is a good stuff?
Well, we were chatting earlier about the support that you got when you arrived from the company.
Yes.
So what did your employer do that made the biggest difference in helping you succeed?
But you know what? When we came, it was like, first of all, we don't know nobody. I didn't have family here. I didn't have absolutely nobody. So me and my roommate back then, like the people here in Alberta, here in Calgary, like management helped us a lot with the housing, with the with everything, with immigration. They give us a couple of options if we want to do it ourselves or we're gonna hire a lawyer or something. So I was going for the lawyer because I didn't want to of course my wife and my daughter came here, so I didn't want to push them. Oh, you need to research Canadian law, because we didn't know. So so then I said, I don't have any options. I need to hire a lawyer and then go from there. But of course, like the biggest support was like the management back then that was doing the immigration papers and everything, and I need to mention like Gerald Nakano, right? So
well, we're going to see him on Wednesday. Yeah.
So he was also biggest influencer in my, let's say, journey. So like it was different. It was better. It was like I was feeling that I'm safe, that I have the support, a huge support. And then it was like, I think that year it was with LMIA work permits. It was a little bit different because our work permits were for Edmonton. We were in Calgary, Prince George, Vancouver. Lots of guys were like, 2 here, 2 there, 2 here. So then, I was having an option to go either to Edmonton or find another company or go home. And then, I said, and Gerald was telling me like, just do your thing and you can always come back. And, not even for me, it's for my family.
Yeah.
That's the biggest reason that I'm here.
So you shuffled around. I know the LMIA, the rules and regs kind of changed a few times.
Yes.
You weren't the only ones that were affected by those changes too. I remember with our first group that we brought in from Jamaica, there was an education requirement that changed halfway through their LMIA, and it caused a great deal of concern. And people were scrambling to try to get a different level of education to still meet the requirements at that 2-year mark for their PR application. So, but you landed in Edmonton. I know you spent some time in Edmonton to satisfy the requirements there. But once you got your PR, you ended up obviously back in Calgary.
Yeah, but you know what? The thing is with Edmonton, because I was in Edmonton because of the nomination first. It's like the process of a nomination, because you need to have like certain amount of kilometers that you need to nominate. Back then, I don't know what is the requirement now, but that was back then, and then, going north, driving north, beautiful places, Yukon, the most beautiful roads for me.
Yeah.
So, and hard roads, of course. But no, like I was in Edmonton for 10 months. And then, of course, talking to Mr. Gerald to come back to Calgary, and there was absolutely no issues. Because I was having my nomination back then, so I can come back. And then, go from doing Canada Bread and Air Liquide accounts. But Air Liquide is my main account now that I'm doing for probably 8 years. And that's dangerous goods, and I'm super happy.
Good.
Super happy.
You've been with the same company today. You have grown with Canada Cartage.
Yes.
I had opportunity to watch some of that growth, and now you're on a specialty account that
Yes.
is very important account to them, and you're no better suited individual than yourself.
Yeah, because like I went also through the stages in Canada Cartage. I was instructor for the forklift, for the B trains, like pro trainer, lots of steps that it was good. Like lots of people were telling me like, oh, you need to change the company. It's maybe better. I said no, because it's like for a couple of dollars more. I don't want to go through the same rookie status to go to the
Right.
top, and it's gonna take a long time.
Plus when you have that sense that they supported you along that
Yes.
journey, right?
Yes. Yes.
There is a sense of pride that
Yes.
comes along with being
Yes.
a part of that company and
Oh, yeah.
remaining there. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
great to see. So I'll just finish off. How has this opportunity changed your life professionally and personally?
Oh yeah, it changed my life. It changed my life and my family life. Like my wife's, and my wife is my biggest support. Of course, like raising my daughter here, it's like a huge thing because providing her a better life, education, everything. Like you see now, after these 10 years as a company guy, mostly, like now I'm owner operator for the
Wow,
same
good for
company.
you. Good for you.
So, that's a huge, again, step in a new direction, right? So, and I think that nothing will change. It only can get better.
And 10 years later, you're a Canadian citizen,
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like,
own your own truck,
Yes.
and
Yes.
you've contributed back to Canada, and they've
yes.
given you that opportunity, and you've
Oh,
paid
yeah.
that back and then some, and it's been a great journey by the
Oh,
sounds
yes.
of it.
Oh, yeah. Journey was like, it was hard, to be honest with you. It was not easy. Like, these 10 years, everybody was saying, like, yeah, it's easy for you. No, it's not. It's not. Everybody's thinking, like, yeah, you have, house, you have car, blah, blah, blah. But it's not. It's a hard life. It's away from home. But, I have a support of my family. So that's a huge thing that keeps me going. Of course, support of the company that I work for, of course, but family is
Family's important.
Yeah.
Most important.
Yeah.
Well, that's excellent. And I often talk about the LMIA program and being a part of it as a highlight of my career, and being over there, meeting you for the first time there, interviewing, hiring, and seeing the success. It's just truly heartwarming for me, and I'm so thankful to have you here on the show and to
you.
talk about it with me. And I never thought 10 years later or more that you and I would have this opportunity. And
Yes.
I'm really blessed to have you here,
Yes.
and I know
Thank you.
the listeners are too, and excited for listen to the rest of your career, and hopefully it continues to flourish with Canada Cartage.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I'm not going to go anywhere.
Well, Robert, thanks again for being here with us. We always like to give one last opportunity for one more question or statement. So do you have anything you'd like to add before we close?
Yeah, I just want to thank Canada Cartage for the opportunity that they came to Croatia, for that whole LMIA program, Temporary Foreign Workers Program. And, I'm so happy. So thank you so much.
Well, we're happy for you.
And thank you, Doug, because, it's really changed my life. It really changed my life for the good. Absolutely for the good.
Well, and I know we'll chat
1000%.
we'll chat with Gerald on how it changed
Yes.
Canada
Oh,
Cartage,
absolutely,
but
yes.
it certainly did from
Yes.
our perspective. So
Yes.
it was a need meeting a need,
Yes.
and what came out of it was just a full driver complement for us, able to service the customer, and I know Gerald will talk about that.
Yes.
But it also gave us an opportunity to see a program used the right way and the success stories that came out of it. And
Yes.
those are something that we
Yes.
can talk about for many years
I
to
can
come.
talk about days.
Yeah.
Days. But, I just want to mention one thing and about Gerald Nakano. Gerald Nakano was like a huge influence from the start. I need to mention once again that is like one hell of a good person to have. Every company should have that person like Gerald Nakano. Like it's something different. It's like, you know, when you meet your glove. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I have like days to talk about Gerald, but I'm not going to waste your time.
Well, I'm gonna
Gerald, I think that Gerald knows that.
I'm gonna celebrate him when he's here.
Yeah.
Because I feel the same way that you do. Under his leadership,
Yes, absolutely.
You know what? He cares about his people.
Yes.
Obviously, he has a job to do, and
Yes.
he holds people to
Yes.
account. But he
And-
definitely is.
And you know what? Like, I think that he went to do something else in the company, but he always knows the names of the persons that he sees. You know, like drivers.
Yeah.
Like not me. Like, you know, like, hey John, hey Mike, or you know, like some other names, but like he's really like for the company.
Well,
and I'm so. You know,
I'd go to do driver orientation, and I'd walk in the door to welcome everybody. He'd already beat me to it as
You
a
see,
senior
yes.
level leader.
Yes.
He's
Yes.
already there welcoming the people
Yes.
to the company,
Yeah,
and that's just the type of guy he was. So,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
is.
Thank you for having me. This is like huge surprise for me that somebody wants to interview me like a trucker. And thank you once again.
Well, commercial drivers are so important to us here at AMTA, as well as society as a whole, and we rely so heavily on goods being moved, and without professionals like yourself behind the wheel, where would we be, right?
Yeah.
Thanks again, Robert, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we'll
Thank
keep in
you.
touch,
Pleasure.
all right?
Absolutely.
I'd now like to welcome Gerald Nakano, Senior Vice President of Operations for Canada Cartage. Gerald, welcome.
Thanks, Doug.
Just to start off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Canada Cartage?
Yeah, I basically, as SVP of Ops, I oversee the operations for Western Canada, so Manitoba West. So basically everything to do with our dedicated division of our company. So
Nice.
Yeah.
How long you been with Canada
this is
Cartage?
my 12th year now
Oh, great.
with Canada Cartage. So yeah, the time has flown by.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Time flies, yeah.
Well, I just welcome you here, and we're going to dive right into the conversation. But how did Canada Cartage first get involved with the temporary foreign worker program, and what did that process look like?
Well, I guess my involvement with the company was started in 2015. And as you're aware, we started, I think it was in 2012, when as a company we went into to do the temporary foreign worker program. And at that time, it was just because of the driver shortage. And it was just, it's hard to imagine the time we have, the situation we're in right now where there's an overcapacity of drivers because, back then it was a real, extreme shortage of drivers. And so I think it was just a way for us as a company to recruit and find drivers, and ideally find drivers that we could count on staying for a while. Because another thing, even when there's a undercapacity in the market for drivers, they also have the opportunity to jump around from company to company.
Correct.
So I think with the temporary foreign worker program, you get a little more of a lock of the employee
Stable
into your
work.
business. You're sponsoring with it, so you have more of that. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So really, it was just to address the driver shortage issue that we had, that we looked at getting into it.
Yeah, if I recall, I think we were like 40 to 50 open recs just in Edmonton alone, and I know that the program, we relied on it for the whole West, not just in Edmonton. So
And people, if I remember correctly, like 25%, 30% unfilled, recs and stuff that we had. So
Right.
yeah, it was again, it was looking at the situation the last couple of years. It's easy to remember because you remember going through, but yeah, it's changed dramatically. But as I guess one of the reasons we're sitting here talking about is that pretty sure that tide is going to turn or change, and we will be back in a situation where drivers are in demand again.
yeah, I believe that's their forecast for sure, and hopefully we get a few years before it starts to hit. But with an aging workforce and not a lot coming into the industry, there's going to be an imbalance for sure. When Canada Cartage hired the first group of foreign workers, what were some of the first the initial challenges with the groups that we?
The obvious one would be coming from Jamaica and coming to our winters. It doesn't matter pretty much anywhere in the world where you're coming from, and coming to our winters and having to deal with that whole thing, the driving in those winter conditions. So I think that's quite a change. But again, as I'll get into in a minute with my experience with being over there in Jamaica with the drivers it's interesting because we have the slippery road, the conditions, the winter road conditions, but they also have a lot of really tough road conditions there.
Yeah, I've been there. They're tough roads and tight roads and areas.
And then some of the, I'd hear stories about where they drive up on the dirt roads going up into the hills and they're wet and they're slippery. And so there's a lot of similarities also. But
how did Canada Cartage at the time ensure that those workers had the resource and training needed to succeed? You recall?
Yeah. Well, if it's okay, I'll kind of get a little bit into my involvement with specifically with the drivers that we recruited from Jamaica. And so when I came into the company, we already had a group of Jamaicans that had come over and were driving for us.
Right.
And I came in at that time, and we wanted to continue to do another round of bringing in more Jamaican drivers. And part of that was in that process, we listened a lot. We learned a lot about what didn't go well or things that went wrong, frankly.
Right.
For example, we partnered with another sort of recruiting company person there in Jamaica that was kind of our liaison to the network of drivers there. And without getting into a whole lot of detail, let's just say that there were some problems with them, from a ethical point of view, from a professional point of view. And I think at that time, because around then the temporary foreign worker program really kind of exploded, I think in 2010 to 2013, 14.
Yes.
And so when you have something like that, an opportunity, you'll get the good players and you'll get the bad players that'll come in there, and they have to usually be filtered out and weaned out. So we had some challenges with some of the people we initially associated with, I think, and we did clear that up. But through that process and just overall through our own learning experience, one of the things that I really noticed coming in was drivers saying, I expected this. I was told this.
Right.
I was promised this and it never happened. And then trying to understand, okay, how much of that was accurate? And a lot of it was accurate. Versus, no, that's not quite how it was. And you get into this, the back and forth on that. And so, but no doubt, I think a lot of the guys, the expectations were not made crystal clear to them, whether that's when they came over, the initial training they had to do when they came here, the housing and stuff that you have to help coordinate as far as finding them places to live, expectations on the job of where they would be driving and what they'd be doing. The message that I clearly got at that time was, we definitely could do a better job of communicating that, both making sure that they are crystal clear on the expectations, what they're getting into. And so in 2018, we went back to Jamaica for another round, and we were in there pretty aggressively. Our goal at that time was to, and we had initial, approval from the government for 95 drivers in total.
Oh, wow.
And so we're looking at 70 for Eastern Canada and 25, if I remember correctly, for here in the West for Calgary and Edmonton. And so one of the things, the really, really good things or smart things that we did was we brought one of our Jamaican drivers, Sean Stevens.
Sean, yes.
Yeah, and you know Sean, and you know what kind of driver he is. So he's a true success story for us, having come over, and he's a really cool guy and a really motivated professional guy, and when he came over, he wanted to learn everything, LCVs, everything. He wanted to do it all, and he's an exemplary driver. He also knows the Jamaican driving scene overall. For example, we'd bring him along and we said, we want you to help guide us in how to do the interviews. We brought along a whole team. We, booked a hotel and we had people coming there. But Sean was kind of a key part of our whole interview process. For example, he would, somebody come and say, I work for this company and I did this. And Sean would say, no, you didn't. I know that company. And you didn't do that. You didn't. All you did was haul gravel. Right? So it was really valuable to have them there to kind of help filter and screen like that.
Yeah.
So we went over with a really solid team. There were 6 of us doing interviews. We paired up in twos. And over the course of the few days there, 3 days I think it was, we did over 200 interviews to narrow it down to 95 people.
Wow.
And when we got down to that last 95, we had a dinner the next night where they could bring their significant others and their family to there, so that their wives, whatever, could ask questions also.
Great.
And then we made a real point. Frankly, it's one of the main reasons I went there, because I wanted to be up in front of these people, all the guys, and talk to them and say, this is exactly what to expect. This is what's going to happen with your training here. This is what's going to happen when you get to Canada. This is what you can expect on the job. These are the type of jobs we offer. And crystal clear, so that we made sure that everything they were told was factual.
Right.
And we didn't want anybody saying, I didn't know that. It was like, ask any question you want right now.
Well, it's not like moving a province. You're leaving another country and traveling
Exactly.
hundreds of thousands of miles and starting fresh in a whole new environment and new culture, new people, and So
well, and it's also really neat meeting the families and understanding, really getting a feel for what a significant move this is for them. And I think that's what's, we talk about situations. We know there's always been situations in our industry and in other industries. You've heard a lot about where the foreign workers were treated poorly. Mm-hmm. And it's just the wrong thing to do. But aside from that, when you actually meet the families and you see that, and in this case, the goal really was to come over, work on a 2-year work permit, and get your permanent resident status. Right. That was the goal.
And in some cases, they left families behind.
Most cases, all of them did that, yeah.
Yeah, and to come and, that's a minimum of 2 years away from family.
Exactly.
Not with a lot of opportunity to go back for a visit or two.
Exactly.
Right? And so it's huge decision.
So that was, you see that whole piece of it too, and it just adds a little more context to the responsibility you have as a company also, what you're getting into here. You have a responsibility to all these people, all these drivers that are uprooting their lives, looking for something that they see will be a pathway perhaps to a better opportunity for them, right, and for their children, for the education, for everything else.
Well, as you know, we had Robert Kupinic on Monday, and he was a driver that I had the pleasure of meeting in Croatia between the Jamaican hires and when we went over there. And, he, I think, got pretty emotional as he talked about his journey and the impact that you've had with his career and he's still, like Sean, still with the company over 10 years later. So it speaks obviously volumes to how Cartage supported those people. But he came to Canada through the program, is really positive. Again, he shared that with us, but particularly how your leadership and the company impacted his life. And when you hear that, how does that make you feel, knowing that you were a part of something? And you talked about the families and, when you're meeting them, it's all encompassing. It's you have a responsibility. You're kind of taking responsibility of those people and, and their lives and hoping that it's a success. But for you, how does that make you feel to be part of something, I think, that's significant?
Well, it's typical Robert to, be so positive and be saying positive things. As you know, Robert would be successful wherever he goes.
Right.
He's a really smart guy. He's a guy of super high ethics and character. He's a hard worker. He's a professional that takes pride in his job. So, we were fortunate to have Robert come work for us because, he's just a solid guy. But to your question, it's a real privilege. It's humbling. In a previous work life, the president of the company, the owner of the company that I was working for, he talked to me about how it's, running the company, it's a tremendous, there's a lot of responsibility and, lots riding on your shoulders when, as a business, you make decisions, and if those decisions negatively impact your business, which in turn negatively impacts your employees and things like if you have to layoffs, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But he said, above all that, never forget that it's also a tremendous privilege to be in that position, to be able to work for a company that provides a livelihood and a way for people to earn a living. It's a real privilege. And obviously I'm biased towards Canada Cartage sitting here talking about it, but I can confidently say that is, from the top on down throughout our company, that sentiment is genuine and real, that it's a tremendous responsibility and it's also a tremendous privilege to be able to do that. And then more so helping people come over and to start a new life in a new country and be successful in doing it. It's just plain cool.
Well, I think we take for granted what we have here. And, I remember when I went over to Croatia, we walked in, it was a standing room only. And there was people there that didn't even have a commercial license, so they didn't even qualify for the program. But they were just there just to be there to see if there was an opportunity for anything. They would, we'll do anything, just give us an opportunity, because there's none here, right? And when I hear about the stories of some of the interviews that happened in Jamaica and some of there was some real tragedy that's happened in a lot of those people's lives over there. And in some cases, those folks, in Croatia sold family estates or their homes that they've had, for generations, just, their cars, everything, just to get here for that opportunity. And, for it not to work out would meant they're going home with nothing. Yeah. So when you hear about, the abuse, and like you talked about earlier, it's, you're messing with someone's, lives, their family lives, their history, and going forward, and so.
Yeah. When you work for a company and a group of people that do the right thing, just for the right normal reasons, I don't know if you find it particularly more infuriating when you see others not doing it.
Yeah, well, that was my next question: is how does it make you feel knowing that there is, and it's not just in our industry; it's across all industries. But when we're talking about our industry, how does it make you feel when you know that there's carriers out there that are, selling people a bill of goods, making the move all the way here, dangling carrots and forcing them to pay? It's just exploiting the program.
Exploiting is good, and just taking it for granted. Mm-hmm. It is. It angers me. It infuriates you, both from the perspective of it's just the wrong thing to do, also from the perspective of how it damages the credibility of the program overall and jeopardizes the program overall. And it's, the story with our recruiting efforts in Jamaica, unfortunately, to continue on with the impact on people, it didn't have a real good, positive, happy ending. No. Because what ended up happening there was, as we got into 2018, the economy was changing and the job market was changing, and now there were more Canadians that were unemployed. The economy was crashing.
Oil and gas crashed.
Oil and gas crashed big, so particularly here in Alberta.
Yeah, so a lot of drivers came out from that industry and filled the dedicated.
So there was still a shortage of drivers. The economy might have had impact all across the economy, but the skilled drivers, there was still a shortage. But however, the pressure was there, I think, for the government overall to be really thinking about opening that up. So what ended up happening, long story, somewhat shorter, is that after we'd had, talked to all the people and said, okay, these are the ones we want to come. We'd selected the people. We maintained ongoing communication with them while we waited for the government to grant their work permits. And it was over 6 months of waiting and dialoguing with these people and their lives kind of basically on hold, waiting what's going to happen. Might even been more than 6 months, Doug, but it was a long time before the government then said, okay, we'll allow 1 year work permits. Well, the 1 year work permits really didn't do any good for all of these guys because they needed 2 years to get their PR.
Right.
So after 1 year, they would have to go back. And also, just from us as a company, practically the amount of money that we're investing in this to do it for 1 year. The idea here is if these people want their permanent resident, we can help support them in doing that. And after they're done, their 2 years work permit with us, of course, they can go wherever they want.
Yep.
Hopefully, we've created a situation that they want to stay with us.
Right.
So therefore, that whole thing effectively didn't happen. And the conversations that we had with the guys that we got to know over that period of time is ongoing correspondence back to them. You talk about earlier about, the sense of responsibility as a company. Yeah, it was not good. It was very disappointing.
Well, and your hands were tied, but you're still connected so closely with those people, and you've been part of their journey.
Yeah.
And you wanted it to be a successful journey. And,
Yeah.
and when, I know there was other issues that came up through with that, especially on the Jamaican side, on the education piece. I know they initially accepted, I think, the Jamaican grade 12 schooling, and then when they got over that had changed mid stride as well, and forced a lot of them to go back to school here to try to get their GED to qualify to remain after that 2 year, which some couldn't make it.
Yeah, so it became, unfortunately, it just became very cumbersome, and I want to be careful how I articulate myself or how I express about that, because I want the government to continue the program. I think we're going to need it, and so I think there's learnings that are had by everybody, and hopefully those learnings. So I don't want to be too bad and saying but again, hopefully as we see the need to. I think the driver shortage is going to become a reality again in a couple of years, 2, 3, however long it takes. And so we want the government to open up that program again. I think there'll be a real need. And so, So looking ahead, do you think Canada Cartage will again participate in that program down the road should the need arise? Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, of course, first and foremost, we want to provide employment for Canadians.
Right.
And we want to, it's easier and it's certainly more inexpensive to source, local or Canadian labor. So that's our priority. I'm just acknowledging the reality,
right.
Knowing where we were for how many years. You were there, how many years was, as I said earlier, it was a regular thing where, you have a 25, 30% vacancy on your driver list, and the turnover and stuff.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't get back to where it was then, but it's going to shift and it's going to change. As you said, the industry, everybody seems to be calling that and predicting that.
Yeah.
So when that happens, we need to be prepared. And I think we're not saying, we just want to go get temporary for a combination of both, but we need to have, I project that we'll need to have that opportunity available to us.
Right. Well,
to go to the foreign workers.
Let's just let's hope that the government keeps looking at making those positive changes to the program, that we get the abuse out of the program, because that's going to, again, drivers overseas are hearing about the abuse as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be shy to participate in that program, regardless of the position that they're in their home country too, right? So hopefully the oversight improves and the program gets strengthened like it needs to be. So, well, Gerald, I really just want to thank you for being here. Appreciate it. And I did say to Robert that I would celebrate you a little bit, and I just wanted to, do that for our listeners. I had the opportunity to work for Gerald under his leadership for, I think, over 11 or so years. You've provided me opportunity throughout my career and mentorship, and I just wanted to appreciate. And, what I really appreciated about your leadership is that, and I said it to Robert, you would often beat me to the orientation meetings to introduce the company to the new recruits. I'd see you stopping in hallways and talking with people, knowing the drivers who are, supporting the company, and, often see you sitting around and communicating with them and having that open door policy. And that means a lot.
Thank you, Doug. That's very kind of you to say. And as much as I was not happy about losing you to the AMTA, I am glad and happy for you that you're here in this role and in this position, because I think you're a tremendous asset to the industry. And I'm glad that you're in, as much as I wish you were in the previous seat, I'm glad that you're in this seat right now, because, the MTA is a good organization, and they have strong people, and they need people like you to continue to promote the industry and support industry initiatives, including the temporary foreign worker program. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share our experience, and hopefully this works out long term, that the foreign worker program opens up again and we'll get there. So, thank you.
We can have you back and we talk about how positive the program is going. So, excellent. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you very much.
Back to you, Kelsey.
Thanks, Doug. I would like to thank you for all the effort you put into making this particular episode so impactful. As well, my appreciation to our guests, Robert, and Gerald, for sharing your knowledge and stories. Stay tuned for episode 3 of The Road Beneath, Beyond the Silence, Human Trafficking and Commercial Transportation, dropping March 13th. Please be aware there is a trigger warning for this episode for instances of sexual abuse and trafficking stories. Now for some news. AMTA's 88th annual conference takes place April 22nd and 23rd at the Grey Eagle Event Center in Calgary. Join us for a jam-packed program covering industry, enforcement, communication, and the impacts of artificial intelligence, as well as a rewards dinner, trade show, and more. Registration details are available at amtaconference.ca. And keep those eyes peeled to your AMTA channels, as we'll soon be dropping details on our 76th Professional Truck Driving Championship, taking place Saturday, May 30th at our Edmonton International Airport location. Do you have any questions or comments about the Steering Change episodes? Reach out on our Instagram at AMTA_CA or LinkedIn and Facebook at Alberta Motor Transport Association. Stay safe and see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of AMTA's Steering Change podcast. The views expressed by guests of the Steering Change podcast are their own and may not reflect the views of AMTA, its hosts, or sponsors. Did you have a question that you would like answered on an upcoming episode of the Steering Change podcast? We want to hear from you. To submit a question to the Steering Change mailbag, hit up our DMs on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram with the hashtag SteeringChange, and your question will be answered either live on the podcast or by one of our SMEs here at AMTA. We ask that you share this episode with those in your network that could benefit from what we discussed today, and make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform so you can be notified when future episodes are released. You can learn more about us and our mission by visiting www.amta.ca. Now get out there and have a safe day.